Photo editing, and by extension retouch, is a very computer intensive task. It is going to be taking a lot of your computer power, storage, resources, displays, and things like that. So for you to effectively retouch your photos, you need to set up your computer nicely. And the best way to do this is, number one, to meet the basic requirements of a PC that should run Photoshop. Okay, so for example, I'm using Photoshop 2024. I think the version is can I get to see the version? I check a bit later. Let me see. Yeah, the version is 26.1. It's the version that has AI and things like that. And now, for me to run this particular version of Photoshop, according to the website of Adobe that makes the software, I need to have a computer with the following specifications. Okay, number one, I need to have a processor that is at least 2 gigahertz or faster, 2 GHz or faster, and mine is, I think, 3. Then for the operating system, I need to be using at least Windows 10. I'm a Windows user, so in case you're using Windows 7, Windows 8, you cannot be able to use this particular version of Photoshop. Then in terms of RAM, the minimum amount of RAM for you to run this version of Photoshop is 8 GB of RAM. Then, of course, you're going to need a graphics card for you to run Photoshop effectively, because you need to render graphics now and then, and previews and things like that. And for you to do that effectively, you need at least 1.5 GB of GPU. GPU is graphical processing unit, or that is the size of your graphic card. So you need to have at least 1.5 GB of graphic card, and the more the better. Then in terms of displays and monitors, you need to have a resolution of at least 1280 by 800 as a minimum. That is pixels, and they recommend for you to have at least 1920 by 1080, which is full HD. Okay. Then in terms of disk space, you need a lot of space for you to, number one, store your files. But on top of where you store your files, for you to run Photoshop, you need to have at least 20 GB of free space whenever you are running the software. Otherwise, you're going to get into this problem of the software telling you that your scratch disks are full. Okay, so you need at least 20 GB of free space, and they recommend for you to have at least 100 GB of free space. Then the other thing that you need to have for the sake of using things like AI features, generation, and also activating your softwares and paying your subscriptions is, and getting updates, of course, is having internet. So that is what they recommend. Just to go through it over once again: processor at least 2 GHz, operating system Windows 10 64-bit or later, RAM at least 8 GB, graphics card at least 1.5 GB of GPU, monitor resolution at least 1280 by 800, but recommended is 1920 by 1080, which is full HD resolution. Then in terms of disk space, you need at least 20 GB free space. They recommend for you to have 100 GB of free space for you to run the software nicely. And after that, you need internet for you to activate your softwares, use AI features and generation features, and also get updates and get renew your subscriptions. Okay, so that being said, I thought I could go further ahead and just share what I'm using here, this particular setup. So I'm running a desktop. You can either use a laptop or a desktop. The choice is yours depending on your preference and your budget. But I prefer using a desktop because a desktop has more room for upgrades. I can connect more displays. I can has a lot of USB ports and things like that. So I'm using a Dell desktop, and the model is Dell Precision 3420 SFF. So SFF stands for small form factor. So it's very tiny in size. It is down here, but it's very powerful in terms of features. So in terms of the processor, they said we should have a minimum of 2 GHz. Mine runs on an Intel Xeon, that is a Core i7 equivalent, and has a speed of 3.6 GHz. Okay, then for the operating system, I'm using Windows 10 Pro. It came with the computer pre-installed and activated. Then I have 8 GB of RAM. That is like the minimum. I'm adding some a bit soon. I want to take it to 24 at least, so I'm adding 16 GB more. Then in terms of the graphic card, I have a 2 GB NVIDIA Quadro P600, and the best thing about this particular graphic card that comes natively with this CPU is that it gives me 4 display ports. So as you guys know, I normally use 3 displays. I have this vertical monitor here, and I have these two. So I'm running this one here for my softwares, and I'm using OBS here to record my screens on the third screen. Sometime in the future, I'll possibly add a fourth one up there for just for entertainment. Then in terms of the resolution, all of these monitors are full HD, that is 1920 by 1080, and the brand of the monitor is HP Elite Display. So this is 221 22 inches, and this is 231 23 inches. Okay. Then in terms of the space, I have a lot of disk in this particular computer, but the computer itself has a 512 GB SSD. That's why I have my operating system and my software installed on my disk C. Then I have another extra 500 GB inside. And in terms of the space I have connected, I have a total of 3 TB. I have a 1 TB, I have a 500, several of them. So I think I have about 3 TB of extra space for storage. Then in terms of the internet, we said we need for activations and AI features, I use Safaricom Home Fiber, and I use the 70 megabytes per second package that goes for around 6,200 per month. So the cost of setting this up was around roughly 90,000 shillings. Okay. And I got everything in this particular setup from a guy called Irongo of Bestseller Computers, Yala Towers, second floor. He has a nice shop that is nicely stocked, a lot of nice deals, and he has warranty support. So I really vouch for him. So that is it about your computer specifications. Like I said, research is going to be a computer intensive task. It's going to need a lot of space, a lot of displays, a lot of graphical processing, a lot of RAM. And so once you ensure that you have, you should at least ensure that you have a computer that meets the requirements. If it is better than the requirements, even better for you. Okay. So one of the ways to do this is you can assemble such a setup piece by piece. You can start with the CPU. The cost of my CPU by itself was around 35,000. Then you can now add monitors one after the other. Ultimately, you're going to have this setup done. Like I said, the cost of this setup was roughly 90 to 100,000 shillings. I was able to get this setup. Like I said, I've set it up bit by bit, not one off. Okay, so that is it about this particular video. That's what you need to know about how you need to set up your computer for using Photoshop in case you're going to be using Photoshop for retouch. And I hope you're going to be using Photoshop because I think it's the best software that you can use for this particular task. So that is the end of this particular video. See you guys in the next one, where I'm going to talk about input devices, why you need to have such a mouse and a very nice keyboard, and sometimes, if possible, and your money allows and you love it, a graphical tablet. So without further ado, the name is Simon Chege, and see you in the next one.